Art Club. What we are doing this week is coils and pinch pots, and you guys will have a lot of different options as to what you could do with these two methods of clay building. But what I'm going to show you today is how to do a pumpkin, and it involves the pinch pot as well as the coil. There are some other options you could do as well. If you want to just do the coil, you can make a little ring holder, succulent ring holder. You could also do one that is a flower ring holder with little coils coming up. This is another option. This is not the pumpkin pinch pot I will be doing, but it's another option. I will be doing one that has a lid. So I'm going to do two pinch pots put together, making a hollow sphere, and then a coil as the top. Other options, you could do a coil bowl that holds fruit or a coil little tulip candle holder. You could also turn your pinch pot into any sort of animal. So these are some other options that you could do that we can help you with. Okay, let's get back to what we're doing. First things first, clay should not be cut by you guys. I have two helpers this year, Maggie and Mafi, and they're gonna help me cut the clay for you. So I don't want you guys using these wire cutters. These are not for students. Every time I've ever let you use them, they get frayed, so you don't get to use them. We're gonna cut the clay for you this year. Let's talk about the clay tools and then we'll get into this project. This is a rib. A rib is really good for slab building, which is not what we're doing this week, but we will do it soon. Slab building is when you roll out clay and you smooth that out with this, which is called a rib. You put those pieces together and you can kind of build what you want with it. This is called a modeling tool. We use to put pieces of clay together, kind of smooth them out and blend them. This is also good for little detail work if you want to engrave into the clay, things like that. I have needle tools, and then I have the versions of this that are just wooden sticks that are pointy, and those are really good for people under 5th grade. 5th grade and under, you cannot use the needle tools because they are really sharp, but I do have skewers you can use instead. And then this is just for scoring. So it's instead of a needle, there's a bunch of them, and it makes scoring really easily. So I bought this just for you guys in Art Club. And then a sponge. We got new sponges just for Art Club. This is something you should always kind of have by you. That way you can dip your finger in it if you ever need to clean up a little area that got too dried out. Okay, so let's talk about pinch pots. To start a pinch pot, you need to get some clay and you need to roll it into a sphere. And it needs to be nice and smooth. To make a nice smooth sphere, you kind of do this motion with your hands where you're rolling both hands at the same time. So I'm gonna make a really nice smooth sphere, and before I start my pinch pot, I wanna make sure there's no cracks in the clay. That's why I keep my sponge by me at all times, to remove any of those cracks. So I see a little crack right there. I'm gonna dip my finger in the sponge and wipe it away. What I see too many people do is they wipe their entire sponge on the clay. Clay actually doesn't like to be soaked. Clay just likes to be a little bit wet in some areas. So make sure that we just kind of go over those areas that need the water. Otherwise, we are not soaking the clay. So make sure we don't do that. Okay, so let's talk about how to make a pinch pot. We have to turn this sphere into a bowl. So what we're gonna do is we're going to turn it into a little thumb lollipop by sticking our thumb into the clay. And then we're gonna go around and start pinching. And when we pinch, we're not pressing too hard. If we press too hard all at once, what happens is cracks come up. So I'm doing this little motion while I'm going around the clay. And I'm making sure that the sides are even on every edge, even the bottom. Feel the bottom as well. Okay, so this is feeling pretty good. It's a little too thick right now. I want it to be about this thick. Not too thin, not too thick. So I'm gonna go around the whole thing and make it about that thick. So I'm gonna make two of these and then put it together, and that's how I'm going to make a pumpkin. Okay, so now I have two pinch pots that are relatively the same size, and we can help you with this if you struggle. We do want our pinch pots, and this is not always the case, but for these ones we're making, we want it to be round at the bottom to start. So what you can do is kind of roll it on your mat like this in a circle, and it helps smooth it out a little bit. So that's what you can do. And what you can also do, and what you should do, is before you start putting the two together, look again for those little cracks. Dip your finger in the sponge, and our finger is going to be a magic little crack eraser. Okay, so now if we have two pinch pots that are relatively the same size, we can put them together to make a hollow sphere. I got one that's a little bigger, so I can fix that by just rolling it on its side like this and trying to get it the same size around the circle. They're the same thickness though, which is going to be helpful. Okay, there we go. Now they match up. So we always score and slip. And to score, like I said, I got you guys these scoring tools, and this helps make it go a lot faster. So normally we have to draw all these lines with this scoring tool. You don't have to draw all the lines. It draws a lot of them for you. So I'm going to score both sides. And that's scratching into the clay. Score means to scratch. So we're scratching into the clay. And the score lines are very important. A lot of kids, they don't do that because they think that all you need is the slip, which is the clay glue. But the score lines are actually more important than the clay glue. If you have two pieces of clay and you just put them together with the clay glue called slip, what's going to happen is they're going to stay together at first, but eventually when it starts to dry, it's going to fall apart. If you have the score lines, it works as a zipper, and the two pieces of clay are now bonded together. So we're going to get that score lines, we're going to get those score lines activated by adding the slip on one side. So our slip, it should have the consistency of a Blizzard from Dairy Queen. It shouldn't be too hard and it shouldn't be too soft. It should be, when you flip it over, it doesn't come seeping out of the container, and yeah, it shouldn't be too hard either. Okay, so now we have the slip. It might be kind of messy, but we're gonna clean it up. Then what we do, we put them together, give it a little twist, and then we can blend. The little twist, again, just helps activate that zipper quality. Okay, before I start blending, I'm just gonna get rid of that excess slip. We don't want any of that excess slip to stay on our clay. It should only be in between the pieces that touch, because this extra slip, it's gonna take a really long time to dry, and it's not gonna make our piece less sturdy if we keep that on. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, we're gonna use either our finger or a tool like this to fully blend in the clay. So I love these modeling tools. That's what any of these wooden tools that aren't just popsicle sticks or skewers, they're called modeling tools. And they're for so many different purposes, like engraving, smoothing, and creating any sort of shape into the clay. But we are gonna use it to smooth, and I like to use this side that has kind of like a nice flat slanted edge, and that just helps me get rid of the seam. And we want this seam to be completely gone, so I'm moving the clay in all directions to get rid of that seam. And I am making a mess, but I'm gonna fix it. So right now I'm just worried about getting rid of that seam, blending the clay. And now, I'm gonna roll it like this to fully get rid of that line. And I can take my sponge, dip my finger in the sponge to get rid of any little crack. And now we have a hollow sphere. So you might think that this defeats the purpose, but pumpkins are not typically cut in half, and I want mine to be cut only at the top, kind of like a jack-o'-lantern. So I'm gonna go back into it and cut it again after we did all that work connecting it. But we do have to do that because if we put a hollow sphere in the kiln, it will explode. So we do need somewhere for the air to get let out. So you would poke holes in it if you don't actually want a lid, but I want a lid for mine. That way I can store my trinkets in here. So I'm gonna go ahead. Before I cut into it, I'm gonna make my lines. So what do I wanna use for that? I could use this to make the divots, or I could use string, that would be good too. I think I'm gonna use this. So I'm just gonna take this to draw lines in my pumpkin, and I'm gonna make them go all the way around. That's why string could be really helpful too. So I'm gonna take this, go all the way around. And I have 2 more I wanna draw. And they're all going through one point in the middle on the top. And they're also connecting at the bottom. So the rib, this tool I'm holding, or as the kids like to call it, a McRib, these are really good for smoothing out clay, but we can also use that nice flat edge to create a straight line. Okay, so now we got a very pumpkin-y like shape. We got those divots that pumpkins have. And now, I'm just gonna exaggerate them a little bit more on the sides. Now what I'm gonna do is cut the top off. And you can have fun with this part. It doesn't have to be a perfect cut. Think about people cutting into pumpkins when they make jack-o'-lanterns. It's not always a perfect cut. So I'm gonna make mine kind of wavy. It's gonna look imperfect on purpose. Okay, and if you want yours to have a bigger lid, you can put it a little further down. Yeah, I'm gonna cut it and then I'll add the top stem. Okay, so when you cut it, there's different tools you can use. I have plastic little knives. Again, if you are someone that is not yet old enough to use the needle tool, you can use one of my plastic knives, and they are a turquoise color, or you can use a skewer. If you're using a needle tool, you do have to kind of carve into it by going up and down with the tool. Okay, when you cut it out, it's gonna have some imperfections at first that we will smooth out by, once again, dipping our finger into the sponge. Some of these imperfections I kind of like because it reminds me of a regular pumpkin. And there are some things we're gonna need to clean out in here. Some clay even I'm gonna remove. I don't wanna go too far with smoothing out because I kind of like the rough texture of it. It reminds me of a real pumpkin. Yay, now I can fit that lid right back on. And I will let it dry like that. And I have to add the stem and then I'm done. So here's my little pumpkin. Let's score and slip on the coil. So first I want to talk about actually making coils. You can make so many things out of coils. The coils need to be big enough. What people normally do when they are first making coils is they make them too thin. We want to make sure that the coil stays about the size of a finger. So it's bigger than your pinky. So when you roll out a coil, you start in the middle. You don't press too hard on the clay. You press actually pretty soft. You have to take your time. Start in the middle and work your way out to the edges. What happens a lot of times when we roll out coils is it gets flat on one side. When that happens, you just roll it up to the other side, smush it down a little bit, and then just try again. And if you see it kind of curl up like this, we're gonna smush it together a little bit more and blend it. So that tends to happen a lot. Again, don't rub your sponge on the clay. I'm just gonna take off a little bit because I don't need that much for the stem. Okay, so with this coil, there's so many things I can make with it. I can turn it into any of those images I showed you on the screen, but what I'm gonna do with this coil is I'm going to trim it to be a lot shorter because I'm making it into a stem. I do want my stem. All right guys, we're just about done. I wanna talk about a couple things. So I already showed you how to score and slip, but I do wanna show you how to score and slip new additions to your piece like this. We have to score on both sides, so I'm tracing around where I wanna put the object. And now I'm gonna use, again, this score tool I got just for you guys. My classes can't use this. This is a score tool just for art club. We're gonna scratch into both sides. And then we're gonna add slip. And slip goes on one side, score goes on both sides. Because again, score is actually more important than slip. give it a little twist, and then you're going to pick up that excess clay, or that excess slip, because remember, we don't want any excess slip seeping through. We want to pick it all up. So I'm going to go ahead and go around there, getting rid of all that slip. Okay, awesome. So now I'm done with this project. Where did it fit in? I think it was supposed to go there. Okay, now the last thing we have to do, Art Club had an issue with this last year, is writing our name on the bottom. So this year I got you guys these little letter stencils. And what you can do with it is you can put them together and write your name, or what I did, my initials. And if it says the right thing, which this is my initials, R-E-G, if you can read it on the black side when they're put together, then it's going to be correct on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead, flip this upside down, and stamp in my name, or stamping my name into the clay. Okay, now I'm done. It doesn't get wrapped up in a bag when you're completely done. What you will do is we'll put it in a safe place in the kiln room so it can dry out, and I can put it in the kiln when it's dried out enough, which it does take 3 weeks for clay to completely dry out. So after 3 weeks, I will put it in the kiln, and we will be ready to work on more pieces and glaze in a couple weeks.